Right, I've had enough. I'm setting up my own channel. It's got to be done. I'm going to call this Useful Carnivore Clips, Useful Carno Clips. So I've been carnivore for about 7, nearly 8 months. I'm a personal trainer, I'm a nutritionist. I've been doing health and fitness and diets for 15 some years. Got a degree. Apparently my IQ puts me in the top 2.1% of the global population, blah, blah, blah. I know my physics, I know my chemistry, I know my biology, I know my history. All round, pretty cleared up guy. But there are benefits, unbelievable numbers of benefits to be had with the carnivore diet. And unfortunately, there is so much resistance out there to what is essentially simply the truth. I pretty much live my life by Occam's razor, which is there's loads of basic summaries or paraphrases of Occam's razor, but it's basically the most obvious thing is the most obvious, the most likely thing is the most likely, and you can live your life by it. And you can learn a lot, and carnivore is something which is obvious, which is the most likely. If you follow your history, humans are carnivores. The anthropology proves it. The carbon dating, radiometric dating of minerals found in human bones proves we're carnivores. Our digestive system's carnivorous. Everything about all truth you can find, humans are carnivores. And of course, being a PT, being a nutritionist, I was schooled. In the balanced diet, food plate, or food pyramid, as it's often called, where you're supposed to eat mostly grains, and mostly fruit and veg, and very, very little meat. In fact, meat is about the smallest amount of food you should consume, and it's all carbohydrates, and it's all just simply bad for you. So over the years, I experiment with various diets. I've tried fasting, 5-2 fasting. I've tried carb cycling. I've tried keto diets, and now carnivore. And all those diets, except carnivore, kind of have benefits. It's mostly around weight loss, muscle gain, fat loss, that sort of stuff. But you never really got to where you wanted to be. I was still building muscle. I could see my abs some days. But nothing really happened till I went carnivore at all. I eventually kept going around and I learned about keto and I learned about low fat diets and I learned about how ketones work and how your bodies use that as a fuel source and how glucose is exactly as much a poison to your body as alcohol is. And I can explain how that works in later stuff. And you progress. So you're taught the food plate. You're indoctrinated like all the other doctors, all the other health professionals, all the other fitness professionals, nutritionists and dietitians. You're indoctrinated to the food plate, the food pyramid, the balanced diet, which is there to support and help make profitable big agriculture and big pharma. Big agriculture who make the grains, who make you sick, and big pharma who then manage the symptoms with drugs but never cure the issue. So loads and loads of misinformation out there. I've had enough. I'm joining the quest. I'm going to start doing my own channel. And what I do is I follow loads and loads of people. So I've learnt most of this stuff myself. I learnt the biology. I kind of put two and two together. And I went, oh, that's why this works like that. Oh, okay. And then you start your quest. And then you start adding to that research and looking around. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend that everyone follows these people. Professor Bart Kay, probably the foremost expert on metabolic processes, biology, biochemistry, sometimes really sarcastic cut downs of other people. But he is my starting point. So this is pretty much in subscription order that I've just set up this new channel, and this is the order I've subscribed to. So Bart K, follow him. Edward Goecki. This guy, he's about 20 years old. God knows what his IQ is, but it must be double mine. And he knows so much about biology. He's written books, contraindicated, and he knows about as much about biology, human biology, as Bart K does. Yet he's about a third of the age. No offence, Bart. Anthony Chaffee, most people have heard of him, but he is very much the doctor type who will explain processes, but he's not really a speaker, which is fine. That's not his job, nor am I a speaker. No Card Life, Dave Mack, as he's called. This guy's great. One of the first videos I'm going to upload is a load of clips from his channel over the years. He basically interviews people for their life stories on carnivore diets. So the number one source, if you ask me, for testimonials. Sean Baker, he's been a carnivore doctor for a long time. He'll include the fitness side to it as well. But he doesn't tend to explain much of the process that goes on. He sort of kind of espouses or preaches rather than explains, like Edward Goecki or Bart K might. But still very good if you're tying it in with exercise. Eric Westman, who's actually a carnivore doctor. Sorry, a keto doctor. Get it right. Not really a carnivore doctor, but carnivore is a keto diet, which you should learn eventually. But he's very good. He kind of debunks the misinformation that she's going around on the internet. So he kind of cuts down other people's videos. Very good. Ken Berry, again, a bit like and Sean Baker, Anthony Chaffee in a way. He kind of says what you need to do and what it is, but it won't really explain the processes. But if you want a general sort of idea of how carnivore works, absolutely essential that you follow him. Eric Berg, probably the biggest doctor out there in terms of followers on the internet. We get loads and loads of good biology lessons from him. Absolutely essential information. Kent Carnivore, Kent, isn't qualified like all these other people are so far. Well, I don't think Dave Mack is qualified actually either, but Kent Carnivore isn't officially qualified. He's not a doctor or anything, but Kent is the man who probably gave me my eureka moment. So I've been learning about how fats work, how ketones work, how glucose destroys, and blah, blah, blah. But it was Kent's story of when he unfortunately had to have didn't have to have his colon removed, but doctors wanted to remove his colon because he was having severe issues, bleeds, and it was actually a predicted cancer prevention measure by cutting out part of your body. Unfortunately, he only learned after that if he'd have gone carnivore years before, he'd have never had the problems he did. But the eureka moment for me was when he was explaining his story of when he eats fruit and veg. Because he doesn't have a colon, he now has a colostomy bag. The food passes through his intestines and goes into his colostomy bag, so he can actually see it. And when he eats things like fruit and veg, the eureka moment for me is when he says, it goes into my colostomy bag, and it's exactly the same as when I ate it. So in other words, it's gone through all my intestines and is completely untouched and ends up in my colostomy bag ready to go where would normally be my colon. So if we're meant to eat fruit and veg, why do our intestines not digest any of it? Well, I'll tell you why. There's loads of reasons why. We don't produce cellulose, which means we can't break down and digest cellulose, which is what most plant matter is, the starch energy storage for, well, the sugar storage for plants. If you don't have cellulase, you will not break down any cellulose matter at all, which is why it goes through your intestines and into your colon as complete stuff as it went in after you chewed it a little bit. Only then does your colon bacteria have a field day and break it down and turn it into that stuff we call fecal matter. And it's passed out as literally waste, because it was waste when it went in. But anyway, Kent's a kind of survivor, if you like. But brilliant story in history. Thomas DeLauer, again, he's probably a bit like Anthony Chaffee. He does do interviews and testimonials as well. I'll kind of explain how it's Paul Saladino. Yeah, kind of put him on there. He's got some useful history. He kind of went off the rails a little bit. He was not doing carnivore quite right, but he still has some useful information on there. Dr. Sarah Myhill, she calls herself the most persecuted and cancelled doctor in the world. And she might have a case for that as well. Because she's been going around telling the truth, and everything from the legal system to institutions have been trying to shut her down and shut her up. And I've actually joined one of her health professional sites as well, as a health professional. Nick Norwitz is kind of an experimental scientist. He's not a carnivore doctor per se, but he does a lot of produces a lot of papers and studies on the effects of certain things, which does involve carnivore, but not exclusively. Some of it will be pro-carnivore, some of it won't be. And because he's an experimental scientist, he's always being critiqued by other doctors. I think even Bart Kay's had a go at him a couple of times, but it's still a useful channel because it's all about gaining information. So, carnivore clips, there will be clips from these people when I find them useful, when they're useful for me, when they're useful for me sending them to clients that I train in real life. But if you're looking for a starter list of people to follow to learn everything you need to know about a carnivore diet, subscribe to these people and do it like now.